Hello and welcome to this video where I will be talking about what an RNG loot system is. So RNG stands for Random Number Generator. So the RNG is a default feature within World of Warcraft. For example, when you type /roll, you will roll a number between 1 and 100. And there's other types of commands you can do to do specific ranges with the minimum and maximum range. But basically it's a gambling feature where you can get a number. So that's what the RNG is. So the RNG loot system is a loot system that's based around that feature. So it's a chance type game or loot system that was invented by players, and it uses the RNG feature to distribute the loot in the raids. So the loot is awarded to the group member that wins the game of chance. So using the RNG feature. If everyone passes on a loot that dropped, it will typically go to the organization, community, guild. Just gonna refer to that as the group going forward that organized the raid. So if everyone passes on the loot, it goes to the group itself. And the in-game loot system that's used for RNG raids is the master looters. So you set your raid to master looter, and then the master looter will be giving the item to whoever wins the game of chance. So in its simplest form, it's any type of RNG chance game that determines the winner. As long as it's using the in-game RNG function, it will be an RNG loot system. Most systems uses 1 to 100 for the roll, and the winner is the one with the highest number. And then if there's more than one player that get the same highest number, those that got that number will roll again until there's only one winner left. Now, most groups will put restrictions on certain items. So the most common restriction will be only classes that can equip an item can participate in the chance to win that item. That will be applying for bind on pickup equipment that cannot be traded to your alternative characters, that sort of thing. But let's say, the tier 1 warrior chest piece, the chest piece of might drops. Most raids will not allow a priest to roll on that item, because a priest cannot use that item, cannot equip it, and cannot also not give it to anyone else. So that would be the most common restriction, would be the class restriction. So an example. So let's say we are raiding in Blackwing Lair, and the epic sword, the chromatically tempered sword, drops from the boss Chromagus. So 10 players want this item. Now, what everyone's going to do is all the people that want this item, and let's say there's a class restriction, or the restriction is that you have to be able to equip it. So everyone that wants that item are going to do a roll between 1 and 100. So just /roll. So let's say everyone does that, and that players 7 and 8 both roll the highest possible roll, which is 100 in this example. Now, because there's a tie between players 7 and 8, they will be required to roll again. So now only player 7 and 8 rolls, and player 7 rolls 56, and player 8 rolls 75. So 75 is higher than 56, therefore player 8 wins with 75. And then the master looter gives the item to player 8, and player 8 receives the item. So advantages. So there's no need for raiders to fill out a predetermined loot priority sheet, called a wish list, ahead of time, which, for example, you do when you do a loot council, that's my BIS, LCTMB, or a soft reserve, hard reserve loot system, SR/HR. And it minimizes the workload for the group leadership with this system when it comes to loot distribution, just because it's handled out by just a game of chance. So there's no, there's nothing to track. There's no, like a GDKP, you're tracking who is bidding for what, who is winning and trading, and there's a pot, and there's a split for performance, and all that stuff. There's none of that with this system. And it's not a DKP system either, so there's no points that people accumulate that they have to spend, and someone has to keep track of who has what DKP and who can bid for what, that sort of thing. So there's none of that either. And there is full transparency regarding how any item will be handled out during the loot distribution if it drops. So certainly this can reduce uncertainty, stress, arguments and conflicts, and just the overall friction among group members. So this would be an advantageous aspect of the RNG loot system compared to, for example, loot council. So since the game of chance determines who gets the loot, there is no need to loot council every single item that drops. So this could reduce non-productive time or downtime during the raid, just reducing the overall duration of the raid. So sometimes when certain high-value items drop and you have a loot council, sometimes it might take a while for the loot council to figure out who should receive that item. But here you're just, who wants it, who meets the restrictions, typically at least the class restriction, and then they just do a roll, and then the winner just get the item. So it's very quick, doesn't require any discussion back and forth. And this system also eliminates the possibility of having a corrupt loot council. So loot council corruption can arise when the loot council members prioritizes their own gear or favor their friends, or having some sort of bias in regards to when they're distributing the loot, which in general just leads to unfair distributions of loot. And so in loot canceling or loot council loot systems, you can have an actual corrupt loot council, or you can have just a perception of a corrupt loot council, both of which can cause frustration among the players in the group, especially since that system heavily relies on trust and transparency. Other advantages is that because you cannot purchase items with DKP points, DKP being dragon kill points, seniority, basically how long you've been in the group, or attendance, how often you have attended raids with this group, is a lot less important. Some DKP systems will struggle with recruitment because of the head start effect, where the existing members in the group that were there from the start, they have accumulated a lot of DKP, a lot more DKP than what they have been able to spend. And so people that join in later in a DKP system basically have no chance of getting any items for a very long time, or maybe forever, because there will always be a head start by the other players. Now, within the RNG system, there's none of that stuff. You could have someone that's been running for 2 years, going for a certain item, and then someone just joins the same week, and the item that the first person had been running for years for drops, but then you roll against the newcomer that joined this week, and the newcomer wins the item. Right? That can happen with the RNG system. So it eliminates the head start effect from a DKP system, but also that sort of dynamic can be considered extremely unfair by the person that had been going for that item for several years and then suddenly lost it to some random that they don't even know. Also on the GDKP side, GDKP uses in-game currency, gold, to bid for items, and the person that bids the most for any item will win it. So GDKP in general encourages people to buy in-game currency for real world money, and that's something that most players think hurts the game overall, and it just has a negative impact of the overall game, that people are buying using their real life currency, real life money, and just buying a ton of gold and then just bidding it for every item and just winning everything. So you don't get that with the RNG system either, because it's a chance-based system. So in summary, for these 2 points, there's no DKP, so you eliminate the head start advantage that existing DKP members have, and then you eliminate the advantage of basically abusing the GDKP system by buying real world or buying in-game currency using real world money. Now, disadvantages of the RNG loot system is that loot is not distributed according to attendance, performance, size of upgrade, attitude, etc. So certainly some members will find this system to be unfair, especially if they are contributing, consistently contributing at a very high level compared to the average player, and then they're seeing a lot of the best items that are dropping going to people who have contributing less, have a lower performance, that sort of thing, just because they were more lucky on that roll. So that can cause certainly some resentment and friction if that happens. and that's just kind of the luck of the draw. And because the way the loot is distributed, because it's random, it does not optimize the overall benefit to the group's performance. Like a loot council loot system, if done properly, and if they are focusing on performance, they will allocate every single item that drops to maximize the performance of the group itself. The RNG system, which is based on luck, it doesn't work that way. You win it or you lose it, depending on your role, and what is the most benefit to the group itself has no impact on who actually gets the item. So most competitive, like very high-end speedrunning progression groups will not be using an RNG system for this reason. It's not unheard of. It has happened that very high-end guilds have used RNG loot systems, but it's certainly not common. And then if players are unlucky regarding their priority items dropping, like they're trying to get a particular item for a very long time, it may take a very long time until they have a chance of getting any loot, just because there's no equalization method for getting loot. It's just, like I said, it's just luck, and you can't compensate for having bad luck with accumulating DKP points or having a lot of money. So in summary, RNG, that's an abbreviation for random number generator, and this is a chance type player invented loot system. So it's not an in-game loot system, but it's something that players invented outside of the game, but it uses the in-game random number generator to decide who gets the loot. So whoever wins this game of chance that's using the random number generator will receive the loot, and then if everyone passes on the loot, that's just going to go to the raid group itself. And in the raid itself, the in-game loot system that is being used is the master looter, and then the master looter will just give the item and give the loot to whoever wins the game of chance. So in the simplest form, any type of RNG chance game determines the winner. Most of the time it's everyone rolls between 1 and 100, and then the highest roll wins, and if there's a tie, the people that are in the tie will roll again, and again the highest roll will win. And most groups do put restrictions on certain items. The most common one is class restrictions, where you cannot you cannot participate in rolling for an item if you cannot equip it. A benefit is that it eliminates loot council corruption, but a downside is that loot is not distributed according to attendance, performance, size of upgrade, attitude, etc. Just the luck of the draw. And if a player is unlucky regarding their item that they really want dropping, it may take a very long time until they have a chance to get any loot, because there's no compensation mechanisms. You're not accumulating DKP. Even if you don't win anything in a DKP system, at least you're getting DKP for attending. Here in the RNG system, if you're not getting your loot on the certain raid, there's no benefit that carries over to the next raid. Everyone is rolling on equal footing each time. And then there's no money as well either, right? So there's in the GDKP, if you're not winning any items, at least you get your share of the pot at the end, so you're getting in-game currency for attending. With this system, you're not getting any money either. So that's a couple of considerations there. So that concludes this video on the RNG loot system. Thank you.